Hey again, it's Nan. This is an interview I did with Dylan Tolano. He's the CEO of VoyceMe, which is a comics platform with a structure for handling content very similar to what Webtoon has. This interview was conducted on the 6th of December 2022. It's the culmination of over a month of work by both myself and my assistant Tyler. Thanks so much to her. A link to her YouTube channel is in the pinned comment and the description. Thanks also to my viewers. Every like, share, and subscribe really makes a difference to the channel and also gives us a lot of validation for our work. Also, thanks a lot to my patrons, without whom videos like this just wouldn't exist. If you like what we do, please go to patreon.com/Webcomics Hub, and from $1 a month, you can support us in making more high-quality webcomics content. All right, on to the video.
Thanks for reaching out and writing an article. It's great to meet you and be here.
Yeah, it's really great to meet you too, actually. I've heard a lot about you from a lot of different people. I guess a good place for us to start, we can start with some easy stuff if you're ready, if you're good.
Yeah, fire away.
Awesome. So just for everyone, just give us like a good description, who you are, what you run, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I'm Dylan Tolano. I'm the CEO and founder of VoyceMe. I like to describe VoyceMe as the first social creator platform for manga and webtoons. We're basically building the YouTube for webcomics for an English language audience, where basically people can post their stories, those stories can be published, and we're creating this social interactive experience around that, which is kind of more to come, but that's the super exciting part of VoyceMe.
It sounds very involved as a thing to do,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, from the creator and the reader point of view, that was like my whole thesis on VoyceMe. I mean, I will probably get into this, but I was an author, found out there was no way to interact with your audience as an author at all. And that's why I wanted to create a platform that centered it around that, where people can interact, and that social interaction that is critical for any sort of creative entrepreneur. This platform, VoyceMe, could theoretically help that be fostered and facilitate it.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. And I guess to further that was why you went to LACC this year, LA Comic Con. You were there with what's his name, Dylan LeMay, the Chop ice cream fold guy.
Yeah, yeah. I was on two panels at this last upcoming LA Comic Con. One was with inspired author and Kerrigan Taylor, and the other was with Dylan LeMay and Alex Clark, who's I believe a famous YouTube animator and comedian.
Yeah, I know inspired. That's Brandon, right?
Yeah, the author of God Game. We flew him out, and Kerrigan Taylor to go on the second panel with me.
Okay, that's fair. What was the second panel about?
The one with Dylan LeMay, that was about basically entrepreneurship, really focusing on that and helping new entrepreneurs and finding niches and really growing it out. The other one was about how to break into the world of anime, manga, and webtoons. And that's where Brandon, Kerrigan, and I spoke on.
Okay, yeah, cool. That's actually really good to know. I knew about the first one, I knew what it was about, but the second one I wasn't so sure. That kind of gives me an insight into your general focus. You seem very focused on the young person perspective, I guess. The TikTok people, the social media, a lot more than other platforms, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I think just naturally with the space, webtoons, manga, I think you naturally cater to the younger people versus Western comics. But most of our early success and a lot of our major success has really been through social media. So we definitely leverage our connection with it to help advertise and promote all series.
Yeah, of course. That makes total sense. I guess that kind of leads me really perfectly into where my next question is, which is to you, you're the top dog, you're the guy in charge. What exactly would you say that VoyceMe is right now?
That's a very hard question. I would say that right now we are a early platform that is helping new creators and new stories get told as of today.
That's fair. I mean, your site's about 3 years old now? 4?
Oh no, a lot less.
A lot less? Wait,
yeah,
because you're right. It's 2022. COVID has been so long.
Yeah, so I mean, the platform has actually only been live for less than 2 years. I made the company a while ago, the legal entity of it. I made that one day before my 18th birthday.
That's fair. Oh, then how old are you now?
I am 21.
21. Wow, that's very young. That's very young to be an entrepreneur, but fair enough.
I get that often, yes.
I guess
still in college.
Oh, damn. You're still doing full-time college. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, they give me free housing and free food because of financial aid, so I'm not complaining.
Tell me about it. I get it. I get it. So, like, I guess VoiceMe as an entity is still 2 years as an existence. It's still quite a while for most companies. And from what I understand, you started out with about 25 grand, which was from that So I'm trying to remember the prize you won, but you started out with,
Yeah.
what, 25 grand in that investor prize?
So I actually started the company with nothing. That was actually the first time we ever got money. So I started the company. What I did is basically I didn't grow up. My family didn't have any money. So what I had to do is I took my college savings, I took my bar mitzvah money, and I took my started working a full-time job at a marketing firm because I was a pro video gamer, so I had connections to a video game marketing firm, and I was able to basically that boiled to like $10,000. It was like 10 to 12,000. I always forget the exact number, but within that range. And that was the first money I ever put down towards VoiceMe. So it was all kind of my money initially. Then using that, I was able to actually like make a really crappy website back then. I was able to attract a few creators. And then using that, I entered a entrepreneurship competition, actually at my college. When I was a freshman, I entered VoiceMe in it, and I got fourth place. I actually didn't win, but I re-entered it as a sophomore, and that's where we won first place. And I won $20,000 from that. That was the moment VoiceMe really started to explode in terms of like actually raising more capital.
Yeah, and I've done my research as I would, and I've seen some of the funding that's been going on right now, and I guess some of the funding rounds you got. I know you just finished a funding round quite recently. I think it was sometime around August, and I guess that kind of these are the things I think in our comics industry, and the thing a lot of creators think about, which is like they always want to know where the money's coming from the site, and where it's going to, because it kind of lets them understand the interest that they're working with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I guess kind of a question is like, where's the money coming from?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think I can legally say, and we recently raised around. There are some articles now out, I believe, on like Yahoo and stuff about it, and some other sites that kind of took the press release and took the exclusive on that. We have investors from like Crunchyroll, Marvel, like this is public, like the CEO and founder, like Rotten Tomatoes came in. People from CNN, CBN. We had Best Summer Venture Partners, which is I think the second best VC fund in the world. They came in this round. That's public knowledge. Torch Capital. So a bunch of like all top New York and global funds actually came into this round, which is great because now we have a team of experts from like Snapchat, Netflix, Lyft, Fable, some other platform I'm forgetting that Webtoons actually owns, but a lot of different ones.
Sounds like a lot of different people coming in, a lot of different interests being at play, but that's not always a bad thing. I mean, I'm assuming from your perspective, it's been very, very not even fun, but it's a very interesting, very successful year, all things considered.
Oh yeah, definitely. We were able to raise a massive up round from our last fundraising round, in a horrible market. And I think
Yeah,
that
tell
was
me about it.
super, yeah, that was super stressful and very hard. But we were one of the handful of companies that managed to do it. And I think that really shows, really just like luckily, how good the company's doing and the market as a whole. Like the Webtoon space is getting, and manga space is getting a ton of interest, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's getting so much growth. Like, and even as the tech industry continues to collapse, it's not immediately falling, and that's quite interesting. Tells you a lot about like the different economic pulls that are going on there. I guess that brings you on to more. Like, there's a lot of money coming in, which is good. How many people would you say are working there?
I can say that including artists and authors with full-time employees, right? So they
Yeah.
keep the number all together that are actively on VoiceMe payroll. It is between 50 and 100 people as of today.
50, that's a lot for a 2-year-old company.
Yes, yes, it
Yeah,
is. We've managed to grow quite efficiently, which is great, and we have been able to actually employ a lot of creators all around the world to help fund their series, to help create new series, to work on their own, and it's actually been great. That's probably like one of I think my favorite things about the company is that it's a weird feeling having someone honestly like quit their job to come work for your startup. It is so weird. I can't even fathom it, but it is also like it's a nice level of like I'm glad that they believe in the vision per se.
Yeah, because I know you recently got somebody who worked for Pokemon, I believe, Was it?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Pokemon, the Pokemon company. She worked in the Philippines or Indonesia, one of the two, for the Pokemon company doing marketing. So that's very interesting to see on your list of employee acquisitions, if you will. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, no.
yeah,
She was one of the she was a founding member of the whole Pokemon Philippines franchise.
yeah. She looks very experienced. So it was quite interesting to see that she was coming over. I'm going to ask a few more stat questions, if that's okay. Just rapid
Yeah.
fire. Like, I guess the really easy one is like, what's your site-wide MAU, your monthly active users?
Yeah, I can't fully put a number on it legally. I guess publicly is the better
Hmm.
way of wording it. But
Yeah,
I can say that you want MAU or monthly visiting users.
monthly active users. So that's
So it is over a million for that for monthly active users.
over 1 million. Okay, fair enough. I've seen some different stats around, so it was really useful to ask, I think, because they all give you different perspectives. It seems you're very popular in a lot of very unconventional places within VoiceMe, because everyone's popular in America. You kind of have to be. But
Yeah.
I was looking at some traffic information. I was looking, even though I know they're not all accurate, and I was seeing that you were popular in places like Nigeria. And I saw you were also kind of popular in Indonesia, I believe. No, sorry, it was France and the Philippines. So, it was quite interesting to see
Yeah.
such a diverse spread. Although I
Yeah,
don't know
we're
if that really reflects on your end.
No, you're exactly right. We're a fully international company. It's really funny. Like only 50% of our audience is actually from North America. A lot of people
Mm,
assume it's a lot more. The other 50% is broken up with a majority of that being from Europe and then the other majority being from Southeast Asia. So like your France mainly, your Germany, your Italy, then you have your India, Philippines, Indonesia. Like really, like a lot of those countries bring a lot of traffic.
that's not an unexpected, but a very interesting outcome because every site's different. Every site's got different kinds of people coming to it. It's got like a different meta, so to speak. So it's always interesting to see kind of like the people who are interested in a certain platform. Could I know how many comics have been put onto your site in total?
I think I can share chapters if that's okay. I think that's a public number right now.
Yeah, I think that should be.
I think that's out there somewhere. I can say we have I think over 20,000 published chapters, 15,000, 20,000,
Mm.
somewhere within that range.
Yeah.
Somewhere right, something like that.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. That's actually pretty impressive, especially after only 2 years. You know, and I guess this is a question a lot of creators want to ask. I figured I might as well just come out straight with it. I know you're gonna have to give me a range on this one for lots of reasons, but what's the most you've paid out to a creator in a given month, or to creators in general in a given month, as in like your total across the entire platform?
I can say that we have artists and creators on our
Mm,
have stories on our site that has quit their jobs to work full time on their story. Multiple. So I think that depends on what that means to someone, but
of course.
usually that's a good sign.
That's a big move. Yeah, that's a big move. I
Yeah.
mean, like, yeah, I think for people, the concrete number is a little bit, it's something they value a lot, especially because I think a lot of creators right now are measuring things off of Webtoon, who recently, after some back of the napkin math that I did recently, I found that Webtoon was just over $1 million this year, which doesn't sound like a lot. And then this is just to their canvas creators. But it was a really big move for them as a company. And I guess it was people are just kind of trying to understand, like, if I leave where I am and I come somewhere else, is there the same amount of money? Which, isn't true. No one has that. No one's an established 20-year-old company. But for a lot of them, they're just more curious as to like if the grass is at least somewhat as green as it is where they are. And then a question I was told to specifically ask you by by multiple people: what are your opinions on NFTs?
That's really funny.
I
Me
know.
as an individual or me as in the company? I mean,
I think they mean you as the company, partially you as an individual, but only in as much as you as an individual is involved with the company.
yeah, I mean, I'm not involved with NFTs. I mean, I
Yeah.
think I've never got into it. My first impressions was just like it came true at the start. I was scared it was gonna be a little scammy.
Mm.
It was gonna be way too much hype on it, and it'll eventually die down. I think all that has come true, and that's why I never touched it. To be honest with you. However, do I see capability in the market? Oh, I definitely do. I mean, I think that NFTs as a whole. I mean, this is me more myself. I was doing more
Yeah,
research in
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I think it's very similar, or I guess Web3. You know, it's the whole. It's kind of sync them together in the same boat usually sometimes, but
Yeah, almost always people put them in the same place.
yeah, I mean, I see it too, just like when the .com kind of era started, the Web2.com era started, tons of money started coming into it, tons of platforms started up, maybe like 2 or 3 still exist today. But that doesn't mean it was useless. We all use it. It's our lives now. Those companies just didn't, there's tons of companies that just didn't know how to utilize it to the best capacity early on. I have a feeling that NFT and Web3 will be the same thing. Do I think that NFTs can bring value in the comic space? I'll be transparent. I think so. But only if done right, which is, that's like the really important part of that statement. Where, like, for example, if you're selling an image for $1,000, $20,000 for your comic, I don't think that's correct.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah. Do I think giving something where like someone could buy something for $50 or $100 to support a creator, and maybe if they buy it, they get a hardcover and a shirt and free chapters? I actually think that could be worth it, depending on who's buying it. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, out of the whole crypto world, taking that out of the equation here, I think like that's actually really good value, and that could really help people. Now, the user, the buyer, gets IP rights, basically, which is cool. They're a part owner of the series. I would love to be a part owner of like Naruto. The creator gets, if done right on the right platform, the creator gets the major part upside of that. And the buyer, they didn't just get an image, they get a hardcover, which would normally be $25, $30, a shirt, maybe another 15, and free chapters, which could equate hundreds of dollars. So I think like under that logic, it could be very beneficial. Like that's the way that I see it. I think there's a lot of potential. I think it just needs to be done right. Do I think it's been done right? Not really. I think there's maybe some groups here and there that are kind of doing it. But I think it's super, super fascinating just to even live through it. It's a very historical thing in my opinion, which I think fascinates me the most.
Yeah, I mean, like I think I tell my friends all the time, I'm like, we live in eventful times, which, depending on who you are, is maybe what you want. But that was a very nuanced take. You know, you considered a lot of the different angles, and I thought that was quite interesting. A lot of people have been very like yes, no kind of answers. So that was quite a nice response to get. I'm now going to kind of transition into my final. This is one of my final, like, you know, just snappy questions before we hit the what I would call the bigger ones. What would you describe your relationship with creators to be as a platform? You know, as a company, what would be your relationship with, what do you consider your relationship with creators to be?
Ooh. What is it, or what would I like it to be, if you don't let me clarify?
I guess it's a combination. I think it'd be good if you start with what it is right now. Tell me what you would want it to be.
Yeah, I think right now it is a really open collaboration with our creators. I mean, I always say this statement that content is king. And it's true. If your content is the king for us. Or if we didn't have stories, we wouldn't have a platform. And who makes the stories? Creators. So I think creators are ultimately the most important key to any platform. Your creators need to feel like they're being taken care of in a good way, right? They need to feel like they're safe, that they have opportunities to grow, that they can subscribe to a mission. And I think that right now what we're trying to do is hit all of those. And I think through VoyceMe, we actually allowed many creators to start their creative journeys and really helped try and give them opportunities to grow their stories. I think as a whole, this to the future and now, I have my own little antidote of sorts that my theory that I always tell our team is we must treat our creators like entrepreneurs. And I think that is the most important thing, that as we build out VoyceMe, that is something that I would want us to get better and better at. And as our technology gets better and better, we want to enable that.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah, if you wanna predict the future, if you want the future to go a certain way, you just invent it, you build it. So
exactly, we want to give. My thesis is we give creators as many tools as possible. We let them utilize it how they want, because it's up to them in the end. We can give suggestions, show data, but it's really what they want to do.
Yeah. Okay. That makes total sense. I've been trying to get onto the platform, by the way, I like to, before I talk to I've spoken to the Global Comics CEO. I've spoken to the CEO of one of the NFT webcomic things. You know, I'm speaking to a lot of people right now, especially as like a creator myself. I like to go on and make sure I've given the website a good like test drive, you know, uploaded a test page, looked at some stuff, that kind of thing. And like VoiceMe is really hard to like, and we'll get to like user interface stuff later. But VoiceMe has been really hard to like use. I didn't really know how to like get to the creator page. So I'm just gonna ask you directly. What's the creator experience in terms of analytics?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think as of today, it's actually it's subpar to what I want it to be. And actually, I think to a lot of the other sites, I mean, also like Global Comics, I know their founder as well. It's actually like, I think it's actually worse than that, to be honest. But I think it actually shows that, I think this is why we're one of the few companies that's like raising a lot of money right now. Like out of all the comic companies, is that, this is what I say, we have a crap website, but we're able to have so many users and chapters growing on a monthly basis with series and people interested, that our stories and our creators are just so interested and so good, truthfully, that utilizes the platform, that we're still growing with a really bad experience. And I think as a founder, it's where you have to admit faults. And I think that is definitely where our fault lies. This website was made before I raised any money. Right.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crappy on that regard.
Before I even came to speak to you, I've been speaking to quite a lot of different people. I've spoken to quite a lot of people that have worked with you. I've spoken to people who are of just different positions around you or away from you. And one of the things one of them said to me was, you know, at one point the site was supposed to act as like less a site for users, more a business card for investors. Is that how you thought about it until you kind of really had the budget to really do more?
Honestly, not really. I mean, so we had 3 website iterations. All were basically before I raised any money. The first ever was when I only had like $8,000 to spend on technology, which you'd probably guess is not very much to make a whole website.
Yeah.
So
that Wayback Machine, that's I saw.
Yeah. So that one was beyond crappy. But that is actually where everything started, because people were like, wow, this is really cool. I wish I was able to actually post content. I was like, I agree with you. Then the second website was when I had $20,000 and I was only able to allocate about 10 to 12 of that to a website, because when we needed server costs, we had to pay out and get new creators. That was like how it broke down, something around there. And honestly, that was also a really bad website, because you cannot make a website with that amount of money.
Yeah, you can't make a UGC website with that kind of money. That's not possible.
Yeah, exactly. And then this website we have now, I think this is when this was when we got like our first angel check, and I used 100% of that investment to this website, which I think it was only $15,000 back then. So once again, all websites were pretty much made under 20,000. Never thought of it as a business card. Each website was definitely an improvement from the last. I think that was like the biggest thing. But it was more just, at the bare minimum, I wanted to create a portal for people to post their content and for people to read it and payment to happen to creators. And I think that was the most important thing, and that's how I always thought about the website until now, where we're actually rebuilding the whole website, and we're doing it with focus groups from our community, where we have host town halls. I literally just show screenshots of everything. And I'm like, roast it, give me input. What do you love? And so far, everyone is like loving the new website that's gonna be launching relatively soon. So I'm very excited for that.
That's fair. I think I've seen quite a lot of photos of that. Some of my sources have like been DMing me them over the evening, especially as they knew I was going to be getting closer to the time when I was going to talk to you. And they were all like, you know, have you seen this? Have you seen this? And I've seen it. You know, it looks really stylish. You know, there's a whole thing about joining into active conversations. I'm not fully aware of what that's about, but you know, it looks really stylish. I don't know what your specific audience wants. I'm not going to sit here and make any prescriptive judgments. It just looked interesting. So it's good to know that you're thinking about it. It's good to know that you're heading in that direction. I'm going to have to do a little bit of a step back in my questioning here, because I'm going to have to go back so I could get to somewhere else. I asked a lot about, you know, where you see the site, where you see things right now, where you see a lot of VoiceMe now and going forward. I guess a good question to go to then would be going back a little bit. You know, you told me you got started. You got started with like no money. Then you did the contest. From what I've understood, there were other people involved at the start of the company, although I don't know to what level. I know there was Tom Ford. I don't know if he's still involved, but I assume he looks like he started founding the company with you. I don't know how that went.
Oh, no, I was a sole founder.
Oh, you were a sole founder.
Yeah, Tom was, he joined, I think, like maybe 4 or 5 months in. He was just a Discord community person. We got close. He would share our stories together. He would share the stories to me for input. He was one of the people that joined the town hall a lot. Then I think quickly he became a moderator when we did our first ever moderators. He was a part of that group with a lot of the people actually are still part of our Discord. Then he became an admin when we did our first, got big enough for admins. He joined with it towards that. And yeah, then basically he decided, then him and a few other admins who actually still speak to the other ones, they co-founded a studio for like 2 months called Tech Studios, and they ran that a bit, and we had a small partnership there. But no, I actually did like pretty much everything by myself. We had a few people come here and there to help as like contractors to like help manage a specific series or do art for a series, or I'm trying to think what other stuff did we do, or maybe give like advice here and there. But really kind of I was grinding like 120 hours doing everything.
That's valid. I should say the reason I brought up Tom and to an extent tech, although you brought up tech before I did, on the masthead your name's there. You're like put down as like founder in a lot of the things I found about tech.
Tech was more or less kind of what happened was it's a group of 3 editors who founded it. Someone named Eli, Sev, and Pert. Eli is actually so cool. He drove to our con. He helped run our booth, volunteer. Sev is awesome. He's literally he reached out a message today saying it was so cool to see you on a con on a panel. And then Pert, and they kind of just reached out one day and like, hey, we were thinking about making a studio since we're all like editors and we've been helping edit some stories, where we can maybe like help edit some VoyceMe series. We have connections to maybe some artists. We can kind of help on that side as well. Focus more on novels. And they're like, would you want to do some sort of partnership for something like that? And I was like, yeah, sure, definitely. Honestly, stuff needs to still be cleaned up on it, but it was like it ran for like a month and a half. Was like a super small thing, so it wasn't ever much of a worry.
And I think I've also heard about one of my sources told me about somebody called Luke Zhang. He runs Karathos.
Yeah, that's a studio we're partnered with.
Yeah, they're from Singapore, right? Or from China? I don't know which one. Not clear.
Yes, he is from Singapore.
Yeah. So like, what's the partnership there? Like, what's that relationship?
Yeah, it was more just like we were looking to expand some of our stories, and they had connections with different studios based in China. So we did a partnership where they would basically help reach out to some of the studios and translate negotiations, and help them actually do the translation of some stories. So we became like the official English producer of like Magmel, which is on Netflix, because they helped kind of work out that deal. They made that connection, and we were able to work out that deal, and they helped translate the series.
I was wondering how that put together, because I was looking into Catharos as well, just trying to realize that the name was Catharos, not Carathos, and just trying to understand like how they related to you, because they kept coming up in a few documents here and there. So I figured it'd be good for me to just clear that up. That's actually really interesting to know. I was assuming that like a lot of the content, because if anyone goes onto VoiceMe, the number one thing they'll notice is there's a very specific type of content that's very consistent. There's always a god, there's always some fighting, or there's always some supernatural force and some fighting, and that's an interesting thing to see, because usually most websites, their like content profile kind of generates over time, but it seems like you guys really just got I guess what you thought was your main content profile nailed down quite early. So I was trying to understand, if tech or Catharos is why are involved, and just fully understand like the way that was working on your end.
Yeah, no, it was more actually strategic direction I took the company. I've noticed that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I noticed that more or less what happened is when you do an industry analysis and just being a creator in this space. So we'll start in the first part. If you think of any major Webtoon, focus on like Webtoon platform right now. Think of your Webtoon, your Tapas, your Tappytoon, your Manta Comics. They all have similar top stories. It's all romance, it's all comedy, it's all drama. All those platforms tend to focus more on the female demographic. It tends to be a little bit younger. But I've noticed, and I've interacted with a ton of people before I started VoiceMe, like my friend group all basically were in the same kind of demographic that I was, in terms of like they were posting or reading on other sites, and they're like, man, there's never any good action series on these platforms. There's no detective stories, or they're weak, or there's no really cool, like it's like hard to find a really good like leveling story on like the Webtoon US server, for example, or like like it was really hard to find content then based around action. I started looking into it, reaching out to creators, reached out to over 300 creators on Twitter, and almost all of them were actually action creators, and they were all gave like, it sucks, they get no support. They see other series get bumped up or published before they do, and there was just no platform really built for them. So I made, one of the things is I took the strategic direction early on is like, well, what happens if we cater to, not directly 100%, but if we just say like, hey, like we support and we're open and we love action series. We wonder how much that would actually grow the platform. And I think that's one of the reasons why we actually exploded, because of that, because of our focus on there, because now when someone could come for a story, something similar, they could funnel down to it. Doesn't mean we kick out any romance series, because we actually have a few really popular and romance series that we're actually even comedy series we're working on now, but it's more of a strategic direction on that. And we have actually had calls with like a lot of the companies I actually just mentioned, and they actually kind of complimented us for being on that direction. And that's actually why a lot of investors and people believe that we actually manage to get a lot of success right now. Start small, grow wide, instead of throwing your net too wide early on.
That's fair. I mean, I think when that comes down to, for a lot of creators that I've been talking to about your platform, some of them have felt very rejected, not outwardly, like not like you told them to like go away or anything. It's more like, they come onto the platform, they see a bunch of gods and fighting and stuff, and they go, well, maybe this isn't for me, and then they leave. And I guess like I was just trying to understand if that was on purpose, to cultivate a very specific type of content, and eventually you were going to diverge and like, become more wider in terms of your acceptance pool, or if you were just going to stick to this path, or if that was an accident.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was more of like a strategic happy accident. I mean, like we have series like Link Soul, like that's more romance first per se in its nature, then action second. Or we recently published from pilot to an original like Sunshine Cafe, and we have like some other romance series like Lost Domain. We just made an original, Crow's Calling, Magus 13. All those stories I mentioned in particular all have very widely different art styles, and they aren't all action first. Like Lost Domain is actually like is relatively low action throughout that series, considered more a fantasy story. And we're like producing literally 2 really funny comedy stories. We just had meetings earlier today, so it's now we're expanding, but we wanted to make sure that users in our early days were able to filter between content as readers.
That's actually, this has all been very informative, because it's been giving me a wider understanding of the platform and the forces at play, if you will. So I guess now I kind of get your niche. I get the kind of creators you're looking for, and a lot of people would probably feel a little bit more comfortable knowing what you're looking at and like how you're slowly moving to become more of a wider content platform. And that's just, and your direction as a company is really clear. I guess what I was going to ask was, as it is right now with the direction the site's going, what exactly are you trying to achieve with that? Webtoon's got this approach of there's a walled garden, then there's canvas, right? Global Comics is a free-for-all. Everyone's got different approaches. What exactly is your site approach going forward? What do you want that to be? I've heard some people say you want it to be a little bit like Twitter, a little bit on there, and a little bit of other social media platforms on there.
I would say in the closest comparison, we are probably more near Webtoon, but we throw more community involvement in it. So like Webtoon has like, they're kind of like their originals, right? And then they have their canvas. I would say for VoyceMe, we actually have originals. We have like effectively our Discovery, which is like, like a canvas. But we also have this middle ground called pilots, where actually the community gets their voice involved when it comes to choosing what's actually published on our platform. So it's this, for us, that's the more multi-tier approach. But I would say like the underlying topping that we're adding is not becoming a Twitter, but just allowing for social interaction and creativity to foster on the platform. So for example, what we're going to be having is that creators can create like polls and conversations that they can interact with their audience. They can create prompts. People can message on panels. They can reach out to artists with authors, have live chats. This is because the creative space is this space is the only space in the whole creative industry, writers, where they have no interaction between their audience. People will just post content, people read it. There's maybe sometimes a comment section that's usually very inactive. There's no deeper interaction. Video people have YouTube. Video gamers have Twitch. Dancers have TikTok. Art has Pinterest, has Instagram. Like cooking has, like the list goes on and on and on. What about the authors is nothing for authors. And it has been proven over the last 30 years that interactivity increases sales, engagement, just makes creators feel good. So that's the element we're taking. So we're like Webtoon in that sense with with that pilot focus, but throw in social interaction that space has never seen yet.
No, that makes total sense. Like that's a really big move in that more social media-y aspect that more than every other platform has either been willing to do or is currently doing. That's actually very interesting. I guess all of that's very interesting to me. You've got a really big audience base. You've got this direction that you want to go into, where you want to kind of like bring that audience base to a new way of experiencing comics. And I guess the thing that comes to me is like, how is, like I've gotten some reports from a few audience members, a few people talking to me about like, well, I want to experience the app. I want to be on the app. And how can they experience those things if like the app isn't working on their device? And like I've gotten at least 2 people out of a group of people have come up to me about like the app just doesn't work on my device. The app just doesn't download. From what I understand, looking into VoyceMe, and I don't know how much of a technical person you are, because I think you're like more of a business
I'm pretty
man,
technical.
right?
I would say I'm more creative,
technical.
but definitely pretty technical.
Okay, great, cool. I can have the technical discussion with you. And from what I understand, it's a Next.js based application. Like it's some kind. It seems to be based on Next.js to make the apps, to make any of the software, or is it React, or what's going on there? What's going on with the site that's making it that people just can't even download it?
Yeah, so it's built on React. It actually works right now for over 30,000 devices. Okay. It's just sometimes there's the specific, truthfully, more 1 or 2 devices here and there that doesn't work. Sadly, in the current state,
don't get it.
Sadly, that is like what's happening. However, what we make sure to happen, now we're building it out, is as these new features come out, it is accessible on web, mobile web, and our app. So there's no features gatekeep there. And with the enhanced kind of experience we're creating, it is actually a good supplement in the short term. However, we are building it so that it is accessible on all apps, but it's not like, truthfully, users are missing out on anything, I guess, other than like the kind of the native feel of opening an app and then reading through it. But our user base, it is like it is smaller than like 0.001% of our audience can't use it. So we are focusing our priorities, truthfully, time and resources, to make the website a lot better than it is first, and then going back and like catering to everyone in every way that we can.
I mean, I think where that situation was coming from, for those people, and the way the argument was posed was a lot of like, a big part of the webcomics audience is children. Like that's like what I think one of the things as creators online we just have to accept is like, the number one reason why any of us could ever be popular are because children like us. That's it. And because of that, we end up with the situation where like, if the reason it's not working on their application, on their phone, is because it's a crappy phone, that's probably going to be a lot of the coming audience, because, a lot of kids have terrible devices because nobody wants to give them $1,000 phone, obviously, right? I bought my nephew a phone recently. I'm not giving him a $600 phone. I'm giving him a $300 phone, if that, on a good day. So like, for a lot of them, I think the perspective was just like, if I'm not accessing it on these devices, is that because my device is old? My device is bad because my device isn't, the latest and greatest? That was a concern they were coming through with. Another concern they also came through with, but it was a situation of whether you were favoring one platform over the other, like in terms of Android and Apple. But I think we'll just focus first on that, like not working on some devices thing. As you said, it's working for most places, and you can't spend too much money on it. You want to spend too much money on it because you have bigger things to worry about. Do you worry though that it might push away a little bit of your younger audience who may just have that really bad phone that just doesn't work on?
Truthfully, not really. Just because like it's literally like 0.001 or something, or another zero in there, percent of our audience that can't access it. So it's a smaller part, and it's not like you can't post if you don't have the app. Like our website is, that's the main worry, truthfully, that people wouldn't be able to post, but that is done like on our website where people can upload those more intensive files, where it's an easier actually process to go through, generally better processors than most phones, right? Especially if it's like a phone that normally wouldn't be able to work. So that is like, it's no worry in the sense of that we're pushing people away. It upsets me, truthfully, that some people can't use it when they want to use it, because I understand that is really rough. So that's why our first thing is like, well, what can we do in the quickest, most immediate time? Well, let's rework the whole mobile experience, because that affects 100% of the people. Then we can go back down.
Exactly. Okay. We're getting to a part now, and I'm just kind of giving you a bit of an update, because I don't like shocking people. It's just not my thing. I'm getting to a part now where I just need to ask you a few questions based on the people I've spoken to understand a little bit more about the inner workings of VoyceMe as an organization. not in a tell me an NDA or release NDA information to me or else I'll cry or whatever. But it's just more so I understand, because while doing a lot of the research about your company, a few kind of worrying things came up. And that leads me to ask questions, because if I'm going to tell other creators, hey, this exists and this is a good place to go or not, it kind of depends on the way you react to some of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Great. So from what I understand from some people, VoyceMe started out a little bit as a focused on writing, right? Like very focused on the light novel experience.
Not technically. It actually was, it started way back when in a completely different industry. I would say it's not in the light novel. I guess writing as a whole, it was more like a blog, a poem, a ebook kind of platform.
Yes. Okay,
I think that's where it originally started, but our focus was honestly less on the medium. Back then, if you check out the crappy website, it's all about the social interaction. That's what it really started out as, a social interaction platform.
Okay. And from some of the people who seem to have started out around there, I know, when a site starts out, you can get varying types of users. Often what happens is the most volatile people come to your platform because they were rejected from other platforms. And you kind of have to remove them so that you can keep users that are balanced and the kind of people you want around every day. But the person who brought this up to me quite a bit later. They were like, oh, I started, I think the times they gave me was they started sometime around 2020, the end of 2020, and basically started working with you guys really closely with an originals contract sometime around 2021. And, as they came in as a writer, they tell me that it was a situation of a lot of broken promises, a lot of just being left with zero communication. They'd ask about something going on or about a platform thing or just about pay, and then just be blanked. And I've looked into the work that they put out, because I know that what happens a lot of early platforms is you sign someone, they don't make anything, so you don't pay them, obvious. So I looked into them to just make sure they were up, see if all their work was uploaded, see if they'd fulfilled their end of the deal. And as far as I can see, they seem to have done that. But for some reason, they feel very much like they were left high and dry. And this is a writer first. Is that, do you know why?
I think possibly. Well, I guess it depends. I mean, one thing I like to strive really promote within the company is that we don't miss payments. If you reach out, for example, there's a creator that missed a payment a really, really long time ago that we try to communicate to them. We had a product manager back then who truthfully didn't really do much that they were supposed to be doing without my knowledge. So that they didn't really communicate with some of our creators back then. But because of that, one of our creators missed a payment ages ago. And the second we found about that now, it was paid within hours. So that is something that we were actually really big on, that we give pretty much benefits and bonus on everything. Not miss payments. So I don't really know too much on that front. I think definitely for our early original creators, it is very different to what it is now. So I mean, truthfully, I don't think it's worth comparing one or the other, because comparing apples to oranges. I mean, full transparency. I mean, I was clear with it back then too. It was self-funded company with small resources, right? It was more of a risk. Versus now, there's a lot more of there's a lot different process and order. For example, our original contracts usually have to be serialized now. Back then, because I couldn't truthfully afford people becoming serialized, we never forced that on creators. Actually, in all of our contracts, we never forced a set upload schedule, because truthfully, I couldn't afford that, and I didn't want people working for no money. So it was all kind of optional back then, up to them, because it was all built off. They get way more than the majority of the ad revenue, because that was their major payment back then. So I think that's definitely, I guess, a response to that. It was just a very different time. I mean, truthfully, and I think everyone knows it as well. But some of our creators who started all the way at the beginning actually had, I would like to say, and are having a great experience, who are original creators and novelists too. So for example, AFK was literally our first story ever into the space. And it was a novel. And I'm holding actually the hardcover right here. It was one of the 4 stories we decided to print to sell at LA Comic Con. So for example, and truthfully, we signed that creator on a very different contract. But now with more resources, we're able to re-sign them on a deal that truthfully requires a more serialized uploading schedule, but in return, a much higher payout and a much more resources that we can supply now. So I think it's a very different kind of experience. That's why, truthfully, there might have been a more rough experience at the beginning. But now with a lot of our new stories, we have actually changed the way that we structure it to give a lot more support to novelists. Like, we're actively looking to publish 3 novels right now, and doing an adaptation of like another one, for example.
I truly understand what you're getting at there in terms of how the experience is different now and things are different. And I get that, and I really do. And I respect that you are working to improve things always, and that's a very noble and meaningful thing. What I'm going to say is essentially, while it's good that you're changing and improving, a lot of the creator space, as you would know, is very much used to people seemingly changing while really never changing. You know, you just get more layers between them and you that make everything look like it's okay, but then it's really not. And like and because of that, like I still have to, I'm just gonna have to really push on some of this. It's like, I understand that there's a lot going on and there's a lot of hours going into starting out a company. But in general, for a lot of people, if creators are coming out of the platform around March, April of 2021, or are leaving sometime near the end of 2021, which is only a year ago at this point, and are feeling very much like the platform didn't communicate with them, that poses a problem. Because I've spoken to people about the positive things about your company. I spoke to Mind Fury, specifically, actually, because everyone told me he's a real fan of the company. And Mind Fury told me some really positive things about the company that I truly believe, and you've brought up to me, you've really exemplified. I just want to understand like the kind of disorganization, I guess, that would have started back then. Because that's the word a lot of the people I've spoken to have used. They've used the word disorganization, all the way from writers to webcomic creators. They've talked about the experience of being on VoyceMe as one where, as you were transitioning the company, they were kind of left in a situation where they were basically high and dry on occasion. And while that might be only a few, those few getting hurt for a very small company even is a bit too many, in my opinion. Like Webtoon, really big. If 100 people get hurt there, fair enough. Big company makes bad decision. But if you're a really small company and you have a really small creator base, you know, hurting even like 10 people could be evidence of really bad mismanagement. You know, even a name that's been thrown around for me a lot, there's been somebody called Joshua Polino. So like, who apparently made the experience very, very bad. So I just really want to understand from your perspective, is that true? Why do you think that was true for those creators? And what are you doing to stop that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I mean, I fully agree. At the beginning, there definitely was a lot of misorganization. I would think it's a lot more than a year ago. More like a year and a half ago is when, or even longer ago, is when it kind of happened way at the beginning, where early on I was focusing on trying to grow a lot of different things. So we ended up getting a product manager. I mentioned it earlier. And sadly, there was miscommunication between the project manager and the stories, where I was told by the PM that everything was fine. The authors never reached out to me directly, and I never really found about a lot of issues until much later on, sadly, actually relatively recently. But now...
reached out to you directly? But I have at least 2 of them tell me they directly messaged you and they were just like Donowald. They're basically not seen or spoken to.
Yeah, I mean, maybe 1 or 2 didn't communicate for like a week span because I was doing everything by myself for like a really long time. But ultimately, everyone, to my knowledge, that reached out to me and tried to reach out if it was more than a week or something like that, have all been taken care of in one way or another. I'd agree that there might be 1 or 2 people who had truthfully a bad experience at the beginning. We try to rectify a lot of those, honestly, those creators at the beginning, where I would say actually at the start, we brought in maybe like 5-10 stories who had a very different experience than what these creators have now. I'd say pretty much like 8 or like 7 out of 10 of them, we actually actively went back, went to help out. We reached out and kind of fixed for a lot of the issues that kind of happened back then, because it was a very different scenario. But I mean, there's kind of the door is still open to anyone that had any rough situation or whatever the case may be. I make it clear to everyone that my door is like always open. Like anyone can DM me. And if I'm too busy, because truthfully that sometimes happens, like today's been back-to-backs all day so far since 7 in the morning, I tell them, hey, I'm just really busy right now. Let me send you to our creative team so you can send your pitch that way, or our product manager so that my direct product manager so that he can actually help you. Or and then I'll join in the conversation later. But that's usually the only thing that really happened. I mean, I think that Josh Paulino was honestly a great example of, truthfully, early on, he joined in as a creator. We had an artist that decided to partner with him. VoyceMe actually had no say in that. That other artist was just a part of the VoyceMe community. And then that artist decided to leave that project and join another one. We never actively reached out and stole the person or said you should cancel this. It was actually like separate from our deal back then. We made it very clear, just like earlier, we never enforced serialization because I couldn't afford it back then. It was the same thing that we never forced artists on a project unless we were actively paying for it. Back then, Josh who's actually an amazing creator. We actually really great conversation. We tried to actually make another story relatively recently until life kind of got into the way on his side. But before he reached out to us to try and pursue it again, back then he reached out to his own creator on his own will to try and form a deal with we didn't even know, which is fine, right? Because that's how most people create their stories. So we couldn't control an artist leaving in that case because that was kind of an outside of VoiceMe's territory.
I mean, that's fine. Even if we look at a lot of those things that's happening in the past, and that's fine. I've talked to a lot of people who currently work with you. You're gonna have to forgive me for focusing on the negatives, but for me, my priority as a person who really cares about the space is the creators that are in there, and ensuring that wherever they go, whatever decisions they make, at least they are informed, even if they are bad decisions. Although I don't think yet that VoiceMe is a bad decision. But for me, when I'm coming at it like that, some of the people I've spoken to recently have very much told me things ranging from situations where as they work on some of the comics, that either they feel like some of the assistants are overworked, or they feel like there's almost no communication, or they get updates either from the main writers. I think I've gotten a very direct complaint about one of your biggest writers as to how they upload whenever everyone's waiting for work, they get that work a week late sometimes, which, as you can imagine, for a production line for most comics, that can be, the word stifling is an understatement. That can be very stressful, even though a lot of them are trying to find a way to take it easy. I can see that in a long term, in bigger production situations, in larger environments, becoming very stressful, becoming very, very stress-inducing. And I guess I just want to know, is there something you're doing to address that going forward as you're going into, I guess right now you're in what I would call VoiceMe 3.0. So as you're going into 4.0, is there something you're going to do or that you're planning to do to kind of remove these unpredictabilities, or at least get people to more play ball with each other?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, VoiceMe is like an official company now.
Yeah.
Which is really fun. So we can do more cool things like that, where we have, honestly, the time and the resources to actually expand and fix a lot of those issues. So what we do now with almost all of our stories is that we create a ton of buffer content beforehand, before even launching. So we actually have 8 series in production right now that, truthfully, when we first started, we definitely would have launched. Because, right, it was very different back then. We didn't know if any series was going to do good or not. We just kind of wanted to get stories out for people to read. That was the sole mission. But now what we're doing is we're building extensive buffers to reduce deadline pressure, deadline risk, which is 1. 2, we actually give shorter seasons. So we give more break time between seasons. 3, we actually reduce the total panel count that is actually required. I don't know if you know, but I'm assuming so. Tapas, Webtoons, their artists actually have to do 80 plus panels. For a chapter.
Usually the average now contractually 60, although everybody does a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. I spoke to the high executives of both companies before Tapas killed the original program. That's what they were basically looking for. And that is what Webtoons is looking for now. That's for all their series, pretty much. We don't enforce it that high. We actually have a little bit lower, which could argue that it hurts the reader experience a little. However, our focus right now, until we get bigger and bigger, that we can build really massive teams, is to really focus on the creators on it. So we actually have a little total panel count. All of our teams as well now, we actually build extensive teams. So before, when we kind of built series that we didn't even know if was going to be really big or not, we only actually had a few people on a team. Found out very quickly that could create a lot of stress. Right? And like, I was like, oh, this wouldn't be too, truthfully, I was like, oh, this wouldn't be too bad, because the people I was speaking with, like, they wanted more work. That's what they said, right? So I asked them, would they want more people? And they're like, well, actually, I prefer them more work, because I get, like, theoretically, I had to get more payment. So that's how we structured back then. But now we actually have we have much larger team. We're now, if someone's sick, there's actually a backup, and there's an assistant to that backup. So we actually have like some of the bigger teams in this space as well, because we want to avoid burnout. And I think we're actually seeing a lot of success with this, because a ton of our artists that work with us are actually working on like 3 and 4 projects at a time with us, because they would want more work, and they actively reach out to VoyceMe, because their experience now has actually been pretty good, at least as it seems. And we did a recent kind of artist survey to get some feelers, and it's a lot. This is actually the best it's ever been, which is super exciting. So now with a lot of our God Game is a great example. Before, when we first launched it, we actually shotgun released. We didn't know if it was going to do good or not, so we just created a couple episodes here and there, no deadlines or anything. It was just like, hey, let's make it as quick as possible. Then it started growing really big, and we were like, holy crap. So then we tried to build more of a team, but we found out that honestly, there was a lot of stress between the author and the artist. So what we did is, relatively recently, we actually took a really long season break. I think we took it was 2 months or so, something like that. Where then during that, we were able to build buffer. We got a lot more artists to help out. And now with this, actually, they were all the artists had a massive buffer. So we found a ton less stress. And now we're retaking another, relatively soon, in a bit. We're probably going to take another buffer here, another season, just to give the artists a break, and to help kind of keep the buffer up. And it worked out perfectly, because how we write it in terms of the actual planning of it, the seasons, it's just enough content for people, which is perfect. So basically finish it in volumes. So that is looking like it's working pretty well so far.
Okay, that's fair. That seems at least like you've very extensively considered, to some extent, the creator well-being, which is very important. I think the next thing I was going to ask was, Larita is currently your staff manager, right?
Chief of staff. So I'm assuming that's going to be the kind of interface layer that's going to go between you and everyone else that you're working with, which hopefully should kind of keep people in a position where they feel a little bit more like they're being heard, because you've got a lot going on your own, right? Is that what the purpose of that was for? Yeah, yes and no. One, truly, she has massive organizational knowledge and skills. So she actually helped really organize the company, because she joined in with our first fundraising round, and that's when we really started becoming a real company. And actually relatively recent. So with her, we pretty much restructured everything. She helped really build the teams out. But when it comes to any sort of communication within artists that work within the company, they always have now 3 points of communication that they will always respond to, at a minimum 3. Their project manager, who works directly with them. Then second is Larita. Anyone could literally always shoot Larita a message. The third is myself. As much busy as I actually am, I'm pretty much relatively caught up on most DMs, actually, because I've been kind of recently responding to whatever I can. And then I make clear during all our town halls and everything that we do, that you can actually reach out to any VoyceMe employee, and they will always funnel it within the day, basically, to the right person, so that we can make sure that whatever the issue is, we figure out as soon as possible.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then I think that could kind of alleviate a situation I'm going to ask you about, but I'm going to ask anyway. I'm going to admit it's not been widespread, but I've heard complaints about certain high level creators that you have on platform because they are big, because they are popular, and about how they don't really seem to respect essentially the downline from them. So downline from them as authors to everyone else that does the work to get their content out there. I'm assuming this restructuring will also allow for people like that to be questioned meaningfully by staff.
Yeah. I think I kind of know what you mean.
That very much relates to the thing I brought up earlier about people submitting their scripts a week late.
Yeah. I mean, I think I know what you mean. Generally, what we've been trying to do is that I mean, kind of already answered it. Where now for example, every series like God Games it's like our biggest series and has a big creator on it.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's like an example from there. Like now we have built it down to a T. So certain scripts come in these days, for example, and we're X episodes ahead. And I think before there was actually a disconnect that a lot of people saw between some of the bigger creators on our platform and the interaction between them within the community, which was an interesting kind of thing because, I mean, I don't know, I wouldn't require anyone big or small to interact with other people, but I think recently we've been having a lot of success with that where like, actually, like I mentioned, Kerrigan and Brandon are probably two of our bigger creators. They flew out and they were interacting with everyone. It was really fun. People were just coming up to them. They were selling each other's stories and other stories. Like it was a really like wholesome moment. Like they were promoting like AFK, for example, which was our first story novel. They never even met the creator. I'm not sure they ever talked to him, but they just kind of supported them because they were all a part of the VoyceMe community.
Yeah. Okay. It seems overall that things are changing at VoyceMe, although whatever has gone on in the past is still kind of seemingly following you as far as I could find. Considering I was just trying to find out neutral information, but I kept getting told a lot of things. The puzzle things I got told were very valuable, though. You know, it was good to understand that there was a space for creators who wanted essentially an escape from the current zeitgeist, if you will. You know, I believe Mind Fury basically said to me, it's a growing company and it makes me feel like I've earned my audience more. And I think that's, while there's a lot that I think you should, as a company, should be looking into, I think there's a lot of positive there clearly for a few creators here and there. And that's still pretty valuable, what you're bringing to the community. How long do you think it will be before you're really bringing forth your like full vision for the company?
My full vision for the company is quite long. So
yeah,
probably, I mean, much farther in the future. When will we start getting like MVP features out so people could utilize that? Very soon, upcoming months, if longest.
And I guess the question is, right now, from what I understand, from the different places I've looked and from the different things I've tried to use to measure metrics, you're getting about like 3 million monthly active users, sorry. So I'm just going to ask you, how long do you think it'll be before you hit like a big round 10 mil?
I think relatively soon, quite honestly.
You think you're growing that rapidly?
From what our insights say and our sources of investors who know those some companies mentioned early on and other metrics, I do believe that it'll be relatively soon, actually, which is very exciting. We've been growing rapidly for a very good while. We were like one of the fastest growing platforms, and we're still kind of keeping that momentum. It's slow. Truthfully, it slowed down a little bit, but it's still like rapid growth, which is good. But now it's just making sure that we can cater to that audience and give them the best experiences possible.
I can see the growth is happening, although I don't really see you advertising.
Yeah, that's honestly a very interesting point. So it's actually why we have been able to raise so much money. Throughout the company's existence, we spent like maybe only like $800 on marketing. So all of it has actually been just organic word of mouth growth. On TikTok, we utilize social media a lot for marketing. That's where we promote like a lot of our series, where we promote our pilot series, regular series, competitions, etc. And now with this round recently closing, we're about to actually make another really experienced hire, and they're going to lead a paid marketing team. So that's why I mentioned growth. It's actually probably going to double or triple here because we're going to have more consistent, basically paid advertising that we're sinking a lot in to grow kind of all the series on our platform.
No, yeah. I'm on board. I see where you're coming from. My final couple questions, and you know, you can breathe a sigh of relief. I'm no longer going to sit here and grill you directly. As a creator myself, you know, I know you've got your contest going on right now. Although I think for a lot of creators, there's been from the vibe I've gotten is a lot of like to I'm very interested. As a creator myself, what would you say to me as I'm looking at your platform? Let's have it making my content somewhere else. What is the thing you're going to say to me, you're going to use to pitch your company to me?
I think the bare minimum is very universal, even like not even like depending on like what you're creating, right? So you can be creating a novel or a comic. I would ask, and I would say like, how much money have you made on those other platforms? And I would bet that, well, at least what it says is that like 99% of creators in the space haven't made a dime. The next like 0.5% made a couple $100. And then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. A lot of the competitors in this space right now, you need a large amount of views to monetize, or before you can even monetize. There is very few monetizing options you have. They take a large percentage. Novelists, I mean, excuse my friend, but novelists get screwed over right now, truthfully, on like every platform. They have to write like X amount of tens of thousands of words for like $100. And if they miss a day, they can lose a contract. So a lot of those, I would just kind of ask that. Most of the creators, and I've met creators that have millions of views on other platforms, and they made less than $50. And then the kind of follow-up question is I would ask is like, if you do get an opportunity to make money, who owns the rights to your story? Most of the platforms right now, they take the rights to your story, or they take enough of the actual other rights that you effectively lose the rights to your story. Where VoyceMe, we make sure, and we kind of pride ourselves that we actually never do that to our creators. Truthfully, and I like to be transparent about it to everyone, the only thing we do require to our VoyceMe originals that we help create is exclusiveness. Because if we're going to invest as a startup $50,000, $100,000, etc. on art to help kind of grow the series, we'd like the security that it's going to be on our platform for at least a couple years. So that we can kind of, we invested to help grow it. We'd like to kind of make sure that you just don't take it and run it off somewhere else. So that's those are the two biggest things. And when you kind of start asking creators and start looking out, you find out that a lot of creators elsewhere have either been screwed out on either, or just don't benefit from like monetization. So that's the very short, high-level pitch that's very universal, sadly, to most novelists and comic creators right now.
I think for a lot of the platforms as we're going forward, we're realizing that a lot of our content platforms are also just very much ad-supported. You know, as you're saying, like, how are they making money? A lot of the platforms are on ad-supported, and still they don't get a cut of that. What's your revenue split for ads with the creators?
The general, our biggest one is our general ad share program. So right now, to kind of enter it, you just need 1,000 views, not monthly, just total. We're actually going to be changing that so that anyone could enter right away. But what we do is then, at this current moment, we give 70% base to the creator in terms of ad share. And then that's actually going to be amped up even more in our next website, where we're looking at basically 85 to 90%.
85 to 90%.
And then we have a sponsorship program, which is basically like a built-in Patreon for the sake of it, right? People could sponsor your story to support it monthly. Creators get 90% of that, and we also cover the fees. So it actually nets out to about 95, 96% goes to the creator.
It'll be very interesting to see where your company goes from here. Because on one hand, I'll be honest with you, very directly, the problems that have been brought up to me still kind of linger on the mind. You know what I mean? Like, it's one thing if it was a salty person or a salty, angry creator who was just upset for no reason, but it's been a lot of very like, I left and they didn't, like, they told me they'd take my content down, they didn't. So I guess for me, those things linger on my mind a lot. But it's been really good to hear from you, because it's very clear that, at least to some extent, you really do care about this space. And that's nice to see. That's really nice to see.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, there have been unfortunate situations in the past that we're looking to kind of change going to the future. I think, truthfully, it is upsetting that we had a few rough situations at the front, but I think any startup in any situation, honestly, it counters those. Any platform, Webtoon, Tapas, Webtoon in the US, when I first started, was actually a mess, right? Yeah. So it happens to all. But I think the main thing is, like, as a creator, I can feel to them where, like, I understand where that could be, it could feel really bad. And honestly, I do feel bad that it has happened. That's why I mentioned earlier, but we did this whole thing where we reached out to try and rectify any hardships that were countered in the past. And luckily, most have been fixed in some sort of capacity or adjusted.
I think it's really important that you're doing stuff like this at the stage where you're at, because I think as the bigger a company grows, a lot of startups especially like to use the language of we're a team, we're friends. But realistically, like, that's only for as long as your goals align. And realistically, every platform's goals will eventually shift away from what the actual user base or audience might want from them. So it's very meaningful that you're doing this at this stage before you get there. I'm just wondering, we're all assuming everything stays roughly the same in terms of who's running what. But do you think when you get there, you're still going to be very focused on that creator experience? You think you can maintain that?
Yeah, I think personally, I think we can. I'll even say that I know we will. I was a one-man show in the company until maybe like 4 or 5 months ago now. So I was pretty much doing everything by myself. But now that we have employees, one of the biggest thing is culture. Then that's like whenever we bring in a new employee, we sit down and we basically have a conversation about culture. Every action that we make as a company, we make sure that it can benefit the creators in some sort of way. If it's a website rework, we're thinking about the creators in mind because content is king. If we are thinking about, for example, like we're making an online store that we're launching on our site really soon. We are thinking it fully with the creator in mind. So we're not just gatekeeping it to original content, which many other platforms do. We actually reached out to a ton of different artists that just work for us, or different pilot series, or original series, or series that maybe haven't got a ton of growth in these areas. And we open it to the same opportunity. If they want to basically give a print or a hardcover, whatever they want to sell anything, we'll host it on our site to help support them. So like that's just a small example, but like everything that we're doing, it's always how can we best benefit all creators in management and organization. If something goes wrong, why did it go wrong? Kind of for creators. When we were at Comic-Con, all of our cards that we handed out were a platform for creators. That was our saying. That was on our banner. A platform for creators. It was on our huge 7-foot vertical panel of banners. It was on our 1,500 cards we handed out. It was so that when people know right away, it's not just a YouTube or another form. It is a platform that is built and being built with the creator in mind. And I think that's really important for me and for the company as a whole.
That's in fact, I'll call that a really good conclusion right there. Thanks a lot, Matt, Dylan.
Yeah, I'm a man of many names. Don't worry.
Yeah. Don't worry, I get it. Me too. But thanks a lot. I really do appreciate you really talking about that. I think I hope to hear mostly good things going forward. But I will but if another bad thing does come up, I will hold you to task.
I'll try to fix it as soon as possible.
Appreciate that. All right. Thank you very much. It's really late where I am, so I'm going to bed.
Yeah, thank you. If you don't mind me asking then real quick, where are you based?
I'm in the UK.
Gotcha. Well,
yeah.
Thank you for staying up. It's what, like 2 or something?
It's like 12. I have
12?
to go do so much tomorrow. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. Thank you a lot. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You as well. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.